Welcome to This Organized Life. If you're a mom, wife, or coffee lover seeking advice on how to reduce clutter and reclaim time, look no further than your host, Logan Palau, founder of Simply Be Organized and author of Hot Mess, a practical guide to getting organized. For a lot of people, clutter is their dirty little secret, but it doesn't have to be. Each week, we will share practical tips, chat with experts, and provide strategies on how to keep you organized. I hope that by sharing our stories, you feel a little less alone and more empowered to tackle the areas that are holding you back. So let's get started!
Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of This Organized Life podcast. I am your host, Logan Palau, and we are continuing with our series on thriving with ADHD. And I'm really excited to bring this repeat guest on. The first time she was here, which was a few years ago, I got flooded with emails and DMs from people giving thoughts and feedbacks. It just elicited so much emotion in people that could relate to her story. And I thought it'd be fun while we're doing this series to bring her back and kind of give an update on where she is. And this mystery person is none other than my very own daughter, Miss Logan Palau. And before I bring her out, actually, I'm going to just bring her out and then we're going to talk. So hi, Logs.
Hi, Mom. How are you?
I'm good. Why don't you move up a little bit? You seem like you're like far away. Okay. So, you were on the show several years ago, which is like crazy to think about it. So for anybody that's new to our show that doesn't know you, can you just give everybody a little bit of a snapshot into who you are?
Yeah, well, obviously, my name is Logan Palau. My mom is an organizer, and I've grown up in New Hope my whole life. I've played some music with the music company School of Rock, so I'm very artistic. I sing, I play bass, and I love writing. So now I'm at Moravian University as a communications major, and I am trying to be an investigative journalist.
So for anybody listening out there, she'd like to work with crime junkies. So Ashley Flowers, if you're listening to this. And we've been pretty vocal when you were on the show last time. You were, again, different season of life. You were, I think, a junior, or it was the summer, because I know we recorded in the summer. So it was, I think, the summer of your sophomore, junior year. Yeah. And here we are now, sophomore, junior year, going to college, which is crazy town. And we were talking about what your life has been like, kind of growing up with ADHD. And because we've always just normalized it in our family of this is just kind of part of who you are, not your identity, but this is just something that you have to deal with. And so how do we navigate that? Wondering if you could just give us an update as to how you're doing and, maybe some things that have changed for our listeners that heard you the first time around.
Yeah, absolutely. So from where I was as a sophomore, junior in high school, I really relied on my case manager, Andrea Korn. She's absolutely amazing. I really relied on my teachers to help me, and not that it's not like that in college. Professors are definitely open to helping you, but it is a lot more advocacy for yourself. And I just kind of learned that certain things for high school just don't work for college, for me at least. I used an online planner for high school and it was a lot easier. But now with college and exams and projects and getting the whole syllabus, I've since moved to a paper planner.
Really?
Yes. So that I can highlight and color code it in a better way. So it's easier for me to see.
Interesting. I see the things you know when you talk to your kids. ADHD, we know, is not a one size fits all, right? Not everybody looks the same. Everyone's different. And I'm just curious if you can explain to kind of paint a picture for people And it may have changed. Like, I don't know if there are things that are pretty consistent throughout your life or if it's like morphed and evolved. And I'm sure some of it has, just as you've learned new strategies and matured. But kind of, what does your ADHD look like
For me,
for you? Yeah.
my ADHD, I picture my brain as like those things in the dry cleaners where it like goes
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
around like that.
Yes.
So I have like 1,000 thoughts going around like that, and it's just like whatever's going to be in the forefront of my mind at that moment. And since then, I've kind of had to stop that conveyor belt because it overwhelms me just having all these thoughts go around.
So since then, so your brain has looked like a dry cleaning conveyor.
So since then, I've kind of had to pinpoint my focus and really designate my time to specific things. So I'm involved in a lot of clubs on campus. I write for the newspaper for the university, as well as having all my classes and being a part of a fellowship. So I've kind of had to really reorganize that conveyor belt into more of like a filing cabinet sort of situation where I can look at it, close it, put it away afterwards.
And how do you do that?
Basically, in my brain, I am trying to isolate my thoughts and to just only think of what needs to be thought of in that moment because, like a lot of people with ADHD and just like overthinkers in general, because I am an overthinker, I'm going to look at my plate and be like, okay, well, I have papers for this class and I have a quiz for this class and I'm going to look at everything that I have when in all reality, that's going to be overwhelming for me. And I just need to look at, okay, what do I have for this class? Finish it. Okay, what do I have for this class? Finish it. And maybe take a break, watch like a show in between. Like, whereas with school, like, especially when we went online, I would burn myself out just by like sitting down at the computer for like 10 hours and just doing all my homework then, and then I would be completely burnt out.
Well, it's interesting that you say that because I'm just thinking about like even parents that might be listening to this and whether you have kids or not, just people that are listening and they think about all the things that they have to do with their home and work or taking care of the house and all of the things when it comes to like organization, or if somebody's struggling with clutter and they think of all the spaces, I always say like start in one spot, start small because it gets overwhelming. So even somebody who's not neurodivergent, it can be overwhelming. And then I think if you compound that with somebody whose brain just maybe intuitively goes all over the place, then it is
Exacerbated almost.
Exactly. And so you have to be really, really intentional. And I think that's like a good spot to like, or a good segue rather, to talk about how therapy is played in because we're pretty open. Again, we've normalized therapy. You've got it back. This is therapy is cool.
It is cool.
Therapy is so cool. And actually our therapist, Kimberly, is going to be coming on the show next week. Yes, Kimberly Beal is going to be making a guest appearance on our show. But you've, been pretty much in therapy the better part of your life for all different things. Some of it was, for just normal life stuff. And some of it was dealing with like rough patches that we've gone through as a family or individually. But I'm wondering if you can just talk a little bit about how therapy has helped you. Because again, we're big advocates of that. And, again, you've been on medicine, you've not been on medicine, and you're currently, just to clear it up, you're currently not medicated for your ADHD.
Correct. Yes.
I think it's important to say that. If I could just say, like, we've tried medicines over the years. I'm not anti-medicine. I'm not, I think you have to look at everybody's individual cases. Again, I take medicine for anxiety. You take medicine for anxiety. Your dad takes insulin because he's diabetic. If you need something and it's going to help balance you where you're imbalanced or there's something not right, I'm all for it. Medicine did not work for you for ADHD. Yeah. It actually was counterproductive.
Yeah. There's certain medicines, like I take medicine for my thyroid that I have to take. That is something that I had to take. My dad has to take in his insulin. Like there's medicines that I've learned so far, especially with being on medicines for ADHD. There's medicine for survival and then there's medicine for comfort. And that for me at least, I think the ADHD medicines were more so like a comfort. It was like, okay, I'm going to have this peace of mind that I took this pill in the morning. So now that I'm in class, I'm going to be calm. It was more of like
Mm.
a placebo, like, why isn't this working? Then I would get frustrated with myself. So yeah, being unmedicated, it's not like there's no right or wrong way. I'm not better or worse for being medicated or unmedicated. It's just all about what works individually. But circling back to how therapy is worked into that, therapy has honestly really helped me in realizing that I'm not as alone as I think. And I know that's super cliche, but especially with being an individual with ADHD and OCD and all the different things that I have,
All the D's.
all the D's. And basically, it's just kind of helped me not only realize that I'm not the only one feeling like this, but it's also helped me navigate how to live life in the sense of like, okay, taking a step back and realizing that like not everyone else thinks like this. So I can't get upset when like someone who's neurotypical doesn't think the same way that I'm thinking. Just like I get frustrated when somebody is like, well, why are you thinking that way? It's a completely like reciprocal relationship.
Right. And I think, and it gives you, I would think, I don't know, I'm not in your sessions, but I know, like, it gives you also a sounding board to have somebody say,
This is
here's some ways that you can navigate this.
absolutely. Yeah, it's very validating therapy just in general. It's a very validating experience for anybody, but especially when you're young adult girl and you're just like, "Oh, everything is wrong. I'm failing everybody." Like emotional, all that stuff. And she's a great person. You'll see her next week. But it's very nice to have somebody sit down and tell you like, "Hey, it's okay. You're human. So if you're feeling negative emotions, like it's okay. It's going to pass. It's not going to stick with you forever." And people make mistakes. And it's just really good to hold yourself accountable in some circumstances with therapy
Hmm.
and also learn how to navigate it for the future.
I love it. I love it. So, can I tell a story?
Absolutely.
Okay. So many of you guys know if you've been with us for at least a few months. So we did a big family trip this year to Hawaii. And when we were there, one of the days we were going out to dinner. I don't know if you remember this, but maybe you will. And we were going out to dinner and we were walking through this like hotel going to the restaurant. And there was a mom with a little boy who was probably maybe like 5 or 6 at the time, and he was having like a meltdown, just like he was probably overtired and hungry and all the things. And I'm sure the mom was like, again, I've been at the pool all day or whatever, and I'm tired. And he was freaking out and she was trying to like keep her composure. And he was like thrashing around and like in his thrash, like whacked her, like accidentally. It wasn't like an all out punch, but he like whacked her. And she was like, if you're watching me on YouTube, like she had like clenched fists and was like holding herself back because I know that she probably in that moment wanted to like choke her kid. But he immediately, as soon as it happened, was like, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. And as we walked past this display, you said, I feel so bad. Do you remember this
I
story?
do now.
Do you want to like,
Now I do. Yeah, so
and
we
you,
both had two very different perspectives on this. I remember it now. Okay. Oh, yeah, this makes me like heart.
yeah. And she said, I know we're both upset about this, but for totally different
Yeah, we're
reasons.
upset for different reasons. You sympathize with the mom, which completely valid. You're like, oh, she's overtired. She's probably exhausted from being at the pool all day and having to deal with like the screaming, crying children. Absolutely. But on the flip side, being that kid at one point who has thrashed and been throwing a tantrum, that kid does not know how to emotionally regulate themselves. So right now, they're feeling a lot of big emotions like sad or angry, and they're just like, they don't know how to convey that because they are not adults. They don't, their brains aren't fully developed. My brain's not fully developed, but my brain is developed enough that I can say like, hey, I need to take a second alone. I literally did that the other day. I was like, I'm too angry to talk to anybody. I just need to go in my room and sit. Whereas that kid does not have the emotional intelligence to be like, Mom, I'm really upset and I need a second. So I think it's important that everyone looks at people as people. And I think that might sound a little silly, but like, our parents are people. Obviously, my mom is her own person. She's got her podcast, she's got all her stuff. So I think kids, like, well, I don't know if kids are listening, but parents, play this for your kids. Parents are people too. So they have to deal with their own like lives and stuff. It's not just the responsibility of the children. And I think that honestly would help a lot of people be more patient, because that's helped me at least be more patient with you and dad, being like, okay, like this isn't just like, you're not just mom, you're not just dad, like you were Lori and Josh, you guys have your own experiences, your own lives, and you guys are doing things, and it's not just about me, and it's not just about you taking care of me and Zoe.
Thank you, Dibs. That's so sweet. And you know what we call that, people? We call it grace.
Yes.
It's another word for that is grace. So, but when you're in it, when you're in the weeds, it's really hard.
It's very difficult to pull yourself out of that when it's in the moment. But with therapy, just learn, close your fists, take a deep breath, and try to picture yourself in a happy place.
Okay, so I want to talk. You touch on it kind of at the beginning, about kind of college and moving into this adulthood, because I think one of the things I hear from parents, or I even see it, is that I'm going to use the word coddling, but I don't mean, it's probably not the right word, but it's, parents are doing a lot. They're advocating for their kids. They're doing the things, they're in the weeds with them. And then as they start to mature and go into from elementary school to high school to then eventually to college and adulthood, you need to have a longer leash and kind of like let the reins go. And again, there's no roadmap. I did. I made 1,000 mistakes along the way. But I know it was really important for your dad and me to really teach you from an early age to advocate for yourself, because we knew that it's just a healthy skill, but eventually, like, we didn't want to just thrust you into eventually, okay, we're here, we're gonna be your bodyguards for 18 years and then all of a sudden set you into the wild. Because I felt like in the end that would be a disservice to you.
And I agree.
I'm wondering, what do you think in terms of your evolution into adulthood? What could parents do, or what, you can even just speak to your own experience. What are some of the things that helped you get to the point where you feel like you're thriving? Because I will say, guys, you struggled at first.
I did.
You struggled. It wasn't an easy transition. Going off to college was not easy for you.
No, it was very difficult, especially my age. I'm very young for my grades, so I went to college at 17, not because I was extra smart, just because my age. So for me, a lot of my experiences are based on my age, I feel like, because emotionally, I'm just not at the same spot that 21-year-olds are, even though I'm not that far behind. But I also had that emotional intelligence from therapy. But for my journey of self advocating, like she said, I've always been taught that you need to advocate for yourself. Quote that I use all the time from childhood is a closed mouth doesn't get fed, or something like that, with the baby bottle.
Oh yeah,
baby doesn't get his milk if it doesn't cry, or whatever. But I butchered that. But regardless, as someone who needs extra help, I'm not going to get extra help if I don't ask for it. My teacher and my professor, they're not mind readers. And if I need to sit in the front of the class so that I can pay extra attention, I'm going to ask for that and make sure that I do. So I've always been very outspoken. And in grade school, I always asked, I need to sit in the front. I have ADHD. I would always tell them, because I never thought of it, and I just still don't think of it as a disadvantage or a disability, really, what it's labeled as. But it's not. It's honestly just a different way of thinking. Your brain is just wired in a different way. It's the same thing with people on the autism spectrum. Nothing is wrong with anybody. Everyone just has a different wiring in their brain. And for someone with ADHD, self-advocating is crucial to survival, in my opinion. Everyone is different, but for me, I don't know how I could have gone through K through 12 and now college without advocating for myself, because with two parents that work all the time, they're not going to always be there, even if they want to be there to advocate for me and like say to my teachers, like talk for me. It's just not always possible. So at the end of the day, you're always going to have you, and you know what you need best, so you got to back yourself up.
And I think that was beautifully said. And I think, again, we talk about this all the time on the show about what communication looks like, because it's really about properly communicating. A lot of times when people speak in generalization and being very specific, because when people say, I need help, that's super broad, right? So for some people, help might mean, I need you to sit with me and just like hold me accountable. For somebody else, it might mean, I just need you to go through this. For somebody else, it might mean, I need you to just leave me alone. So when I think really being specific, and we talk about this in the world of organization and setting that expectation of what does that advocacy look like? And I think the more specific that you can be, I know a lot of times parents, a classic phrase for many parents is use your words, use your words. And really it's trying to find the words to describe and paint that picture of what help looks like for you. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I like this is taking me back to school when I would have like go up to my teacher aides and be like, I need help. I don't know what to do. And they're like, okay, well, what do you need help on? And in my like 7 or 8 year old brain, I'm like, I just need help. Like, can you just help me with everything? And they're like, okay, well, what in particular? And since growing up, like I've learned like it's very important. Like, I mean, I'm a communications major, so communication is everything. And that is how we navigate the world. If somebody comes up to you and communicates their needs and their boundaries in like a friendship, then it's going to be 10 times healthier than somebody who is just like silently sitting back and like brooding against their friend instead of setting boundaries in like that kind of sense. I don't know if that makes sense, but
No,
yeah.
it does. So we talked about your, I like to look at this neurodiversity. It's not your identity. It's not who you are. I'm Logan Palau with ADHD. It's just a part of your story. Like it's just anything. And kind of weaving that in and normalizing that, not using that as an excuse, but more context for things like anything when we talk about, again, if someone's dyslexic or somebody is, hearing impaired, again, it's what modifications do we need to use and how can we use this to your advantage? Because I think, a lot of times people think about the negative side to somebody with ADHD. And I think there's a lot of superpowers that come with having ADHD, because there's things that you and your dad that I just have a front row seat that you guys are able to do where I'm like, I don't even know how your brain works, which is legit. I'm like, I couldn't do that. So maybe for people out there, you could just talk a little bit about some of your superpowers.
Yeah, I'd love to. So for me, I used to think I was really good at multitasking. It turns out that I'm not. So myth busted. Just because you can multitask doesn't mean you have ADHD, and just because you have ADHD doesn't mean you can multitask. I've learned that. It's very important to know that all like symptoms, they don't go with everybody. Like I don't have every tell sign of ADHD, and not every person who has a tell sign of ADHD has ADHD. For me personally, like I said, my brain is a conveyor belt. It is constantly thinking of 1,000 things at once. And for me, how I utilize my like superpower is I like to try to be efficient as possible and get things done quickly. And this has been a series of trial and error for me over the years. Like I talked about with 2020 being an online school, I tried to get all my work done in like one day so I'd have a full week, and that was not something that worked. That was a fail. So then I tried again, and with college, I designated an hour for this one class. So I would go full force where it's just like the only thought in my head is this English class or this math class. And I can push myself to that extent that I like, where I am just fully focused in that work.
Mm-hmm.
And then I take my break.
So do you set a timer?
Yeah,
Like you
I
just set.
utilize the clock app a lot. I set a timer for about an hour, or I just kind of keep an eye on the clock. And once it hits like the hour or the half hour, I stop, I watch one 30-minute show because I feel like 30 minutes is a good amount of break. And if I watch an hour long show, I'm going to get too lazy. So 30 minutes I've learned is like the sweet spot, or like a short YouTube video because I love YouTube. That that is a good enough break for my brain to quiet down and subside, and then I can move on to the next topic. For me, ADHD, my main superpower is like bulldozing my work and getting it done in like a sense where I want to go all in, but it can really burn you out. So that's why I have to make sure that I set these timers and create these boundaries for myself.
So do you find that you like hyper focusing is also something, and when you were younger that was something that you struggled with, where we'd be like, oh my god, our brain's in the clouds, but really you were like so hyper focused. So have you noticed like can you sense when you're doing that, like when you're like in that zone?
Yes, absolutely. And a lot of my friends from school now, they've realized it more than like my friends here have. And it's basically like, okay, Logan's going into her hyperfixation mode where it's like we call it Logan land in this house, and now it's transferred to my college. Because they know if the headphones are on and my computer screen is up and like I'm typing and there's not like a video or YouTube or something like that on it, like I'm dead to the world, because like you have to go like this in order to get my attention. The
It's
um
okay.
hyper focusing is a double-edged sword, though, I will say, which is why I had to make sure I created boundaries for myself, because it is very easy to just burn yourself out and
Sure.
just continue working and keep working and being like, okay, well, I can stay up for another hour, I can stay up for another 30 minutes, that kind of thing, but then you're not taking care of yourself. And I had to learn, especially with my ADHD, I would never really think about myself as like a human, and like a human with needs, who needs to eat, who needs to sleep, who needs to exercise, who needs to like get out and see the world and like do things. I would just be like, okay, I am a student. I need to get my homework done. I need to get this done. I need to study. That's it. And that's just not healthy, especially as a young adult who's entering college or who's in college. Just making sure that you make that time for yourself. And school, obviously, like the homework is important, but you need to make sure that you're not completely swallowed in by it, because that was a big downfall for me.
I think that's so important. I want to just touch for a couple minutes before we wrap up on the distinction between like your time management, productivity, which we've kind of been talking about, but then also organization from the physical space and how that affects you. And obviously there's so many different layers to that. But again, I know your dad was saying, and your dad is a prime example of someone with ADHD, and he's very organized with his physical space, almost to like an OCD level. But then he's not going to be listening to this, so it doesn't. But he struggles with more of the invisible, time management, emails, digital stuff. So I'm wondering how the physical organization, I mean, I know a little bit, but maybe in your own words, you could talk about how that shows up.
That's a good question. I mean, I will say, first off, the invisible is the most difficult for me, because like you can't see it. Like all of a sudden you look away and there's been 2 hours that have passed and you're just like, oh. So for me, the physical is so important. I have OCD, and it's gotten better over the years with my coping mechanisms. But for a while, my room was my sanctuary, and it still is. But now I'm kind of branched out into other areas. But for me, especially going to college, it was very important to create a space that I felt safe in and that I felt I could function and live, because this was the first time I was living out of home. And I especially did that my sophomore year when I moved into my apartment. I wanted to make it very homey, and anytime anyone came in, they were like, this is like a house. Like I just have like posters up and like that's it. And I'm like, well, I want to enjoy this space. I want to be able to thrive here, because it's all about your environment. So if I'm just sitting with four cinder block walls and like a single poster, I'm going to go crazy. But if I have my stuffed animals and my bright colors and I have pillows and couches and all this stuff to make it warm and welcoming, and it's like I have options of where to do my homework. I don't have to do it on my bed or on my desk. I could do it on the futon. I could do it in the living room. Like having these options for me just made me excited to get down to business and like do my homework, because I was like, oh, I get to go into my fun room, where it was like before it was like, oh, I'm going to be in my crappy dorm and just try to get this homework assignment done.
Now, because anytime I've gone to visit you at college, because you're only like an hour away, so I see you more than I saw your sister when she was in school, just from logistics. But your dorm room and even your apartment was pretty neat, pretty organized. And again, growing up, you know, you're like a squirrel.
Yes, I
You
like to
know,
burrow.
she burrows little pockets in the corner of stuff. So it's not like you walk in and you're like, oh my gosh, a tornado went through here, but there's little pockets of things, little bunches. And I didn't really see that
Yeah.
in and again, maybe you just cleaned up for me before I came, but I don't know. I'm thinking that you didn't. But
No, yeah, I noticed that the first time my dorm room ever got like messy, I was like, this is way too small of a space to ever let get messy. Like this, it's too much. Like one piece of trash feels like 100.
Mhm.
And I learned like my space was very different. My room at home is like a decent size, but like living in my dorm room, it was obviously a little smaller. So I was able to like kind of, or I had to navigate and figure out how to utilize the space that was there, because I couldn't be like, okay, well, my closet's overflowing. Let me go put this in mom's closet. Like, no, I had a roommate for 3 weeks, so I couldn't use it. I couldn't use her stuff. And then after she moved out, I was able to have a fuller size room. It still wasn't super big. It was a little bit smaller than my room now, but it was very important for me to be able to figure out how to fit in my space, and especially for those who like have roommates, like that is definitely like way more important. I'm lucky enough that I have a single and I can live by myself. And for me, the pockets completely disappeared in college because I would get very overwhelmed. They still happen, but they don't stay there for as long. I don't like walking into a messy room. I don't like walking into a room that smells like, because of like dirty clothes and stuff like that. So like I try very, very hard to keep myself accountable, because I'm realizing like I'm not at home where there's a cleaning lady that's going to come once a week. So if I want my room to not be dusty, I have to dust it myself. So I would set up a time once a week to Swiffer the whole room and wipe it down. And that was like a moment of relaxation for me, because I would either like throw on a podcast or throw on like a YouTube video or something, or listen to music. And it's relaxing for me to kind of reset my room into its original form. And like maybe I want to rearrange something. And it makes me happy to be able to have control over that space, because life is very unpredictable. And I think that I like having that sense of control.
I love it. I love it. Are there any last words, either advice or just thoughts that you want to share for parents who are listening out there, whether their kids are small and they're like in the weeds with the tantrums and the teaching their kids skills, or they're in high school and they're kind of getting them ready to launch, or, just anything that you could think that maybe would be like a word of wisdom for people?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, going right back to the Hawaii story, I think that it is so important for everybody to give everybody some grace. And my advice for parents with young kids, I know I'm sure, I'm not gonna say I know because I'm not a parent, but I'm sure it is difficult when you have a toddler screaming at you at all hours of the day and you just kind of want to, but you can't. I'm sure you want to, but I know you can't. But you just have to kind of remember, you have to take yourself back to where you were and a time where you were upset and you can't communicate. Like, you have to realize this is a 4, 5, 6-year-old human being. Like, whether they can like talk, like, yeah, they can talk, but they're not going to be able to be like, I need to emotionally regulate myself. They're not going to be able to say that. So for parents, I would say just be more patient with your kids. And remember, like, they don't have the same capacity to think as you do. You're a 25, 30, 40, however old individual, and you've had years of experience, and this child is a child and they have not had that experience. And then for kids listening, or parents who are playing this around your kids, I would say same thing. Give your parents some grace. You think that they haven't been where you are, they absolutely have. and they're going to be the most understanding in your situation. So
That's perfect. And on that note, we're going to take our quick break for our hot mess minute. And when we get back, we're going to just wrap up and put Logan in the hot seat for our rapid fire questions. So sit tight. All right, Logs, this has been so great. I'm so proud of you.
oh, yes,
I really am. I really am. You guys, I'm not a braggy mom. I'm really not. But I will say, for any parents out there, I mean, you're talking about a kid who struggled a lot, had really a great team of advocates in the school, case managers. We're very, very fortunate that she went to a school that she wasn't just a number. There were a lot of people there that were invested in her education, even at times when she wasn't invested in her education. And you're now on Dean's List and really thriving. And so for anybody out there, and there were many seasons as a parent where people were like, she's going to mature, she's going to get through this. And I could not see the forest through the trees as much as I wanted to. It just, the evidence wasn't there at that moment. Just keep fighting for your kids and teach them the skills, and they can, this could be you.
They could be a guest on your podcast.
Exactly. All right. So we're going to ask a wrap-up question. So I ask our guests all these questions. I don't know if I asked this back in the day.
I don't think you had wrap-up questions back in the day.
Okay. So we like to ask a question about reading, about books. So it could, I know you're a reader. So is there a book either that you're currently reading or maybe that you've read that's been like really impactful in your life, or something that you would want to share and recommend to somebody?
Ooh, okay. It's a good question because I did just read a lot of good books. Okay, I have to go with two.
That's fine. I'm going to write them down because I always, yep, go ahead.
First of all is In the Garden of Spite. Ooh. It's a book I just finished reading while we were at the beach, actually. It is historical fiction. It is about the female serial killer Belle Gunness from the 1800s. So, like, we never hear about her because it was so long ago. They were riding horse and buggy and she was killing people with arsenic. But, like, it's a really interesting story about, like, a honeypot serial killer. And she's just got a really interesting story. And then the other one is written by Jeanette McCurdy. It's called I'm Glad My Mom Died. I love her. But it talks about the struggles of...
Say it again, because I think you said it kind of fast.
Sorry, I'm glad my mom died. I'm glad my mom's here, and I love her. But Jeanette McCurdy, the star of iCarly, if you're like, why does that name sound familiar? She's the blonde girl.
Sam.
She wrote an amazing book talking about her experiences as a child actor and growing up in a toxic and abusive household. So I would recommend this to anybody who maybe is going through difficulty with a parent, and this could be for an adult. Like, she had an interview with Drew Barrymore, and Drew Barrymore was talking about her relationship with her mom. And, like, so this isn't just for kids. This is for anybody who has had a difficult relationship with a parent and doesn't know how to navigate it. Or if you just want to hear an amazing memoir, it is absolutely fantastic. There was parts where it was gut-wrenching, but it all in all, it's an amazing story.
And it also goes to show, as much as her story is really got some very, like, cringy, very hard to read or listen to spots, things aren't what, you never know what's going on behind closed doors.
Yeah.
And things are not what they seem. Like, you think this person's like on a TV show and all that. So anyway, I think those are two great books. And then again, our last two questions that we ask all of our guests in this particular season of your life, where do you feel you have a little piece of fuzz in your hair? It's okay. Where do you feel the most organized, and where do you feel like a little bit of a hot mess? And I want you to start with the hot mess because we like to end on a good note.
Yeah, of course. Hot mess. Where do I feel like I'm a hot mess? I mean, I definitely still have, I've definitely not completely graduated from the squirrel pockets because my room definitely has some pockets now. But I'd say I'm still a hot mess, maybe with my time management. I've gotten better. I was a steaming hot mess before. Now I'm just a hot mess. So I feel like time management, that's still something I have to get done because as well as I've gone to not burn myself out, I still burn myself out at times.
Yeah.
And then for where I feel the most organized, I would have to say, with just like tidiness and neatness and like keeping my room, like keeping myself accountable. Like I'm making sure that I have what I need, and I'm making sure that I have my work uniform. I'm making sure that if I need to go get gas, like I'm going to go do that. Like,
Right. Like you do your laundry and all
yeah,
the like.
I do my responsibilities.
Exactly. And I think you're just a work in progress, like all of us.
Exactly. I'm just like every other 19-year-old. I'm a work in progress. I'm going to be a hot mess a lot of the time.
Hey, I'm 52 and I'm still a work in progress. So you're not alone. Logan, thank you so much for coming back on the show.
Thank you for having me.
I am really glad. If you are new to our show, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Make sure to click the follow or subscribe button. We're on YouTube. We're on every podcast streaming platform. We're, of course, all over social media. So make sure to follow us along wherever you are. And if you really like this episode, please leave us a review. It matters when people are looking for podcasts, especially in this like uber saturated podcast market. When you find something that you like, it's so important for you to share it with people and just let others know. So we appreciate you. We're here twice a week, Thursdays for our long form interview episodes and Mondays for our quick tip of the week. So make sure that you, again, click that follow or subscribe button. And until next week, I'm Lori Palau. Peace out. Thanks for tuning in. If you like this episode, please spread the love and share it with your friends. And if this is your first time joining us, make sure to click the subscribe button wherever you are listening so you never miss an episode. And while you're there, please leave us a review so other people know that our show is worth the listen. You can also find us on YouTube and Instagram at This Organized Life Podcast. And if you'd like to connect with us, you can head on over to our website at simply the letter B like boy organized.com, which is filled with tons of resources, including free downloads, checklists, links to our amazing organizing partners, and all of our digital offerings. I'll see you next week for another episode of This Organized Life.